Nikki, welcome to People in Legal.
Thank you, David. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you on. I mean, I've actually heard so many great things about you, and you finally recently got introduced and had some great discussions. I'm so interested in your business and what you guys do, and such a valuable resource. But I think just start off with, it'd be great to actually introduce you to our audience. A lot of people already probably know you, but for those who don't, I'd love to hear about you.
Well, first of all, I want to say likewise, David. I've heard a lot about you, and it's a real delight to be on today. And as I said, I wish it could be in person, but this is this is a great alternative. For those who don't know me, I am the CEO of LegalTech Hub, which is a platform I'm sure we'll talk about more during this interview. Insights and analysis company for legal technology, mapping the market and providing resources to help legal tech buyers navigate the space, as well as more than that, but that's a nice short recap. And I'm a lawyer by background. I've also worked in legal innovation, and I'm currently coming to you live from New York.
Wonderful. And you've had quite the journey. I mean, you've actually, there's academia, there's actually in-house counsel, lawyer, to entrepreneur. I guess hearing about that journey from where you started from, and also, I guess, the different countries as well that you've sort of worked in.
I like to tell people my accent is a mongrel accent because I have a little bit of everything in me. I was born in the Netherlands and grew up in Europe. I graduated from school in Germany, actually, but I'm Australian and Canadian by background. So even though I don't sound Australian, I am in fact Australian as well. When I first studied law, that was in Australia. Before that, you're right, going far back, I was in academia initially. So I studied English literature and did my master's degree in English literature, then became a lawyer in Australia, worked for a judge in the Supreme Court of New South Wales, and started my journey at Minter Ellison in Sydney. So I was a litigator. My specialty area was media defamation law. And I then ended up working in-house for media companies in Australia as well. I was a lawyer for about 10 years. And then I moved into the legal innovation space. And I think, some people make that decision consciously because for whatever reason, they haven't really enjoyed law. It was a little bit different for me. I really, really enjoyed being a lawyer, especially in-house with media companies. I thought that was terrific. But as a family, we moved to Canada, and I fortuitously fell into legal tech and legal innovation when I was requalifying to become a lawyer in Canada. So that's how I first got into this space.
Wow. And it's actually really interesting. I mean, the business you've got, I mean, you've seen so many solutions out there. And I guess what was the defining moment of that aha moment when you thought to yourself, I actually want to start Legal Tech Hub?
So I worked in legal innovation in law firms for a decade with various Canadian firms, and then I was recruited to move to New York and work with Paul Hastings and led global teams out of the New York office. And when you're working in innovation in firms, one of the things you're doing, or primarily really what your team is focused on, is looking at the pain points that lawyers have and might solve them. Often that might be just new processes, but often it involves technology. And you find yourself going to market for new technology, looking at what's available. And it became evident to me that there was a real gap in the market for a platform that provided high quality, agnostic data about the market. Instead, at the time, we were really beholden to Google, which is imperfect at best. You can Google contract review, but to find solutions that are relevant specifically to legal law firms and then applicable in your specific environment. So able to be deployed the way you need to deploy them, or operational in the languages that your firm operates in. It's really tricky, not to mention the fact that legal tech companies often have quite unusual names. So even if you know the name, you may not be spelling it correctly in Google. So that's what really led to the founding of Legal Tech Hub, was to build a place that people could go to find everything, all of the different solutions for legal specifically, and then be able to filter. I really brought some of the KM principles that had informed my work at firms and pinned that to the back end of Legal Tech Hub, which is why you're able to filter quite rapidly and find the solutions that will work for you. And then it really built out from there. And I was fortunate enough that in 2021, I had my co-founder, Jeroen Plink, come on board and invest in the company. And that made it feasible for me to make the leap of leaving, a very stable, good job for something that was a little bit riskier. But honestly, the decision I had to make was, is this ever going to happen again? Am I ever going to have an idea that is successful enough that somebody thinks, I'm going to take a punt on you and come on board and help build this out? And it seemed, I think I'm the type of person who will take that opportunity if it's presented. And I thought, I can always work for a law firm, but this is maybe once in a lifetime. Left in early 2022, and that's when we really started building it full time.
And going from, I guess, the employment situation to being an entrepreneur. I mean, how did you actually navigate that leap? That's a big leap.
It is. It was hard. I'm married, so we did have one person in the family still bringing in a regular, stable income. Actually, he now also works for LegalTech Hub. So in terms of lifestyle, moving to being an entrepreneur is obviously a shift. You move from something that's very structured in a well-established business where you look after the area of responsibility you're given to suddenly building something from scratch. And it's fascinating. You're obviously spending time on the business itself, but you're also, you would know, David, you're also doing marketing, you're also doing sales, you're also, when you start hiring people, you need to think about payroll and taxes, and it's extraordinary, all of the administrative additional kind of business systems that are required. But I think what's so interesting is I heard someone say, and I think this is very clever, as a leader of a business, you spend time doing every one of those jobs yourself, and then you hire people into the job, and it means you deeply understand what's necessary for that part of the business by the time you for it. Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think if you don't know the job yourself, how can you actually know if it's been done properly and be able to coach people on it?
Exactly right. And so in some ways, it was quite gratifying finding out about all of the different parts of the business. And it's been a huge learning curve, which I love. Someone who I get bored if I know all of the parts of a job and everything that I'm meant to be doing. I really I'm a continuous learner. So being an entrepreneur suits me in that, you can you have new ideas, you're building, you're making things fresh and new again because you're continuously growing the business, or that's ideally what you're doing. And as you do that, new challenges present themselves and those require more learning. So it's been terrific. And we have been fortunate in the sense that the business has grown well. So that's exciting. Now I have a team again. Now it feels more structured again.
It does. It's very hard actually going out by yourself and working and then you've got to just do everything and not having a team around you. It's a difficult position to sort of be in. I guess having that team to bounce things off of as well is very useful.
Exactly. And it just makes work so much more enjoyable.
It does. It does. Is everyone remote in your organization, or are they?
Everyone is remote. We obviously, like I think most businesses of our kind, take a WeWork space when we need to. We make sure we have company on sites when we're all in one place for a conference, for example. It's helpful to us to be able to hire where we want to, or where the best people are. So we have our head of sales is in London. We're building up a bit of a team there. We have someone in Canada now. We have people across the US. So that's been very interesting too.
It's a particular kind of hiring as well, isn't it? This is what I've just found, because I've got a fully remote team, and you've really got to be quite careful in the hiring process to make sure that people can get on with it, and they're actually okay to work from home, and they're disciplined and they can get things done when they've got to get done. But also as well switch off.
Yes. I think I tend to hire a very specific type of person, and we've been fortunate, I think, that we've been able to get the people on board who really are extraordinary assets to our company. And so they tend to be people who are deeply passionate about our industry, about legal tech. And so they care a lot about the work that they do. And they tend to be quite driven, similar to me, often continuous learners, quite sort of nerdily fascinated by the legal data that we collect and the content that we're putting out. And so it's ended up being a lot of A-type personalities that share very similar interests. And so that's been great. But I hire very carefully, and we hire slowly, so we don't jump on it.
Yeah, it's about higher, really, really costing. And actually, it's almost like get to 120% workload yourself and be a little bit overworked, be in a position where you know exactly what work to give people.
Yeah.
It's just such a fabulous resource that you've got there. And well, I guess legal tech companies and also for on the buying side as well. So, I mean, really, I mean, I think when we first sort of were chatting, I thought to myself, like, it looks like a Gartner, so to speak, for the legal industry and legal tech itself.
That's right. That's really, we think of it that way too. So Gartner goes very broad, but not deep into the legal vertical. And so that's where we, I think, fill a bit of a niche. The platform, as I said, is a full directory of legal technology solutions, but actually it's much, much deeper than that, which people don't necessarily see when they land on it. So we have a full subscription platform, which provides analytical tools and resources. So market reports, comparative reports around specific categories, content that includes tools to help law firms and corporate legal departments run their internal projects more effectively, more efficiently. And then some of the directory now is actually behind the paywall as well. So we capture information about security certifications, data hosting locations, funding of companies, and so on. And that sits behind the paywall too. And as we've grown, the company has expanded as well. So we have the tech piece, which is our platform. And then we also have advisory. So we do advisory with vendors, anywhere from early stage startup to very mature companies in this industry and companies seeking exit. We work with law firms in an advisory capacity around KM, innovation, and AI initiatives and strategy. We work with corporate legal departments on their AI strategy. And we now work with private equity companies as well who are interested in the legal tech vertical. And we have as well, our third prong is our events. So we run an event series on legal tech and innovation. Actually, later this month, we'll be having our first ever conference in London, which I'm
Oh,
really
wow.
excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, yeah, I imagine you have some pretty incredible attendees there.
Yeah, it should be really good. We really focus in on the content, and we don't like our conferences to get too big, but it's important to us since our mission is really around education of all parts of the market, and forming a community is such a wonderful way of helping deliver on that mission. And so our events are part of that, and they really allow for people to meet and communicate on the key topics of the day.
That's interesting. I think in talking to some of the folks at conferences just recently, one of the real gaps is around the mid market. So mid market law firms. There's different sort of around the world what people classify as mid market, but I think there's this real gap of information where people don't have necessarily access to all the resources. I think what you've got would be a fantastic resource for any law firm at all, but particularly mid-market where they've kind of got that expectation to deliver some pretty good tech that's high performance, knowing where to go and what to do, but can't access all the resources, don't have the innovation people, specialist innovation people. So
Yeah. I really agree. By the way, out of curiosity, how would you define the mid-market in Australia? What size firm do you think?
My stab at this one, I'm going to say 50 to 500 would be my stab at the mid market.
200.
Yeah,
Right.
50.
Yeah.
I'll take that back. Sorry, 50 to 300, I'd say would be mid market in Australia.
Okay. Well, we actually define it 50 to 149 in the US.
Wow.
Isn't that
Okay.
interesting? Because if you look at, I know, well, if you look at the AmLaw 100, it's surprising when you're getting towards the 100 end of the spectrum, you're already down to about 300 lawyers. So there are actually, I mean, the US is massive, but the vast, vast majority of firms are in that 50 to 149 lawyer bracket. And there's about 6,000 firms in that bracket.
That's an
And then
incredible
you have,
market.
isn't it extraordinary? I know. And then of course you have smaller firms and solos, but that's how we define it. But you're right. I mean, region to region, but even within the US, for example, there are many different definitions of what it is. Interestingly, we found that initially the take up for our subscription product has been most active in the large law market. And I think that's because they have the centralized teams who understand immediately as soon as they see our platform why it's valuable. But we're actually now making a big push into the mid-market. Yeah, we have a series of events starting in June. There will be 6 of them in different cities around the States, targeting specifically mid-law. We're working with local bar associations. And that's because, just as you said, we think this is really where tech and especially generative AI can be a force multiplier.
Oh,
Strategically
absolutely.
for them, it makes an enormous difference. So I think, and absolutely, again, as you said, there's not the same centralized resource for buying. Typically, they don't have KM or innovation.
Right.
They may not even have a dedicated tech person. They really need support on what's market and how to evaluate the market, and that's where we fit in.
Yeah, and in looking at the platform, I was just thinking to myself, like this whole mid-market is just big. It's very competitive. There's lots of law firms in there. They don't have access to resource. And I just think to myself, like what you've got is absolutely, I mean, for any size firm, but particularly I'm thinking to myself, that just fills a hole in that space.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you're right. Well, we are
Yeah.
trying to prove that proposition now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, and also as well, I guess some of the solutions as well, because I guess some organizations, they sort of say they're different ends of the market. I mean, if you look at a practice management system and picking vendors out, I won't name names, but picking out who, for a mid-market firm, where do we go? Do we pick this system here, this system here? And some systems that are actually selling to larger firms will say, well, we'll scale down to this level here. So it's good to get the information from your platform about where they should look at and what the full options are.
Yeah, that's right. And especially because things are changing quite quickly at the moment. So it might have been a little bit more static before. You kind of knew which practice management systems might be suitable for mid-market, but they're shifting position now. Similarly, you might have known previously what types of solutions do what specific things. But now, because generative AI has disrupted the market considerably, there's far more overlap. And that's confusing to people. It causes murkiness, and I think having something that can lend a little bit of clarity to it is really helpful.
So I guess, there's law firms that can actually get some really valuable information on from a buying perspective and putting business cases together, not even before they're buying, just getting a business case together, understanding what's in the market, keeping themselves up to date from the events, from the research, from consults and the platform itself. And there's also, I guess, that's a law firm side and in-house counsel. There's also then the vendor side, which actually can get a lot of valuable insights in terms of, where does their product actually fit in the market, or if they're looking to actually develop a new product, potentially speaking, in this sector here, or an adjacent, if they're a organization has a product for law firms, wants to move into in-house counsel, what have they got to do? What could that look like for them? What's the market potential for those guys? And I guess as well, having access to a platform where people can kind of see their solutions.
And so Jeroen, my business partner, he's worked on the law firm side as well, but much of his career has been spent on the vendor side. He was the CEO of Practical Law in the US and built it up until it sold. He's been on the board of Casetext and Kira and various other companies. So we're very complementary to one another. And it's been really helpful because we do serve both sides of the market. And for vendors, really, we provide a number of different value offerings. One is we provide through the platform a place for them to become more visible to their buying community, to really put their best foot forward. We know that about 80% of research that people do is done before they reach out to the vendor. And so you obviously want to have the best data available on your product. And interestingly, we've had quite a few firms say to us now, look, we don't want to be going to 20 or 40 different websites to do our research. We want to go to one website and find really good information. So it helps vendors be where the conversations are happening, where that research is being done, and they can increase their visibility on the site and so on. And we also do specific things like product briefings, which we send out to our very broad subscribing audience of about 30,000 people. But then for the vendors as well, you're right, the platform itself offers some really interesting insights for them, and that is increasing. So we've just soft launched something we call Vendor Hub, which is content specifically for vendors, which is only accessible to them, which talks about things like what conferences do vendors get the most value from,
Okay.
based on data and insights from other vendors. How do you value your company, and what are the different ways to value your company? When should you be seeking exit, and how do you go about it? How do you seek funding? All of these things. What do buyers actually want in the legal industry, and how does that work in large law firms, for example? Who are the different buying personas? When do they come into play? So that's another way that we provide value. And then we also, because we provide these market reports, vendors who become members of LegalTech Hub are able to share those market reports and deep dives on their products specifically that live on our site with their prospective customers. So similar to Gartner, we do kind of a quadrant type analysis, and they can send that out to their customers and so on as well.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, like a ton of value there. And I'd encourage anybody at all who's, startup vendors, scale ups, anybody in any region, I guess we're talking to jump in and have a look at LegalTech Hub. Nikki, I'm just curious, like, what trends are you seeing? What things are you seeing in the marketplace? Like, what are people really interested in? What are they talking about? What's keeping people's attention?
So one, which I'm sure your audience has heard a lot about, is agentic AI or agents. We've been seeing agents in legal since fall or autumn of 2023 when they really started being developed but weren't commercially available. They became more commercially available throughout 2024. And now this year, we're seeing all kinds of announcements around agentic workflows being made available in various products. So this is taking generative AI to the next level. It is, rather than task-based chat interface technology, autonomous technology that is able to undertake workflows end to end. The best ones, I know that can make lawyers a little bit nervous if you think of something disappearing and then an output being just delivered at the end. But the best products here are very thoughtful about showing the workings of the agent. So you tell the agent what you want it to do. It breaks that workflow down into tasks, a series of tasks. It will tell you upfront how it's planning to achieve the desired outcome. Then it will undertake that. Some agents are able to, for example, grab data from different sources, bringing it together, undertake some reasoning in relation to it, and then get to an outcome. And that's really interesting for legal because, as you know, lawyers don't work in individual discrete tasks. We work in workflows. So the technology, I think the agentic technology is probably going to be highly relevant to the legal industry. And we're seeing, Harvey has agentic workflows. LexisNexis recently announced that their assistant protege is an agent. We've seen Deep Judge, a search product that has access to multiple data sets at firms, now launch AI agents on top of that. We have Brighter developing them. The news is coming fast and furious. So that's one trend. I want to cover some others, but I'll pause there to see if you have any questions about agents before I move on.
I guess what size of firms or type of firms are more interested in agentic AI than others?
At the moment, probably large firms are probably more interested at this point because it's at the cutting edge stage. And I would say when we look at, so another thing that I can talk about in terms of what we're seeing is the way that law firms are digesting or licensing AI. And because we've seen a number of waves, adoption waves, since ChatGPT launched around sort of build versus buy, all of that kind of thing. With mid-law, for example, certainly last year, if mid-law firms were using generative AI, it tended to be in the form of AI that was baked into products they already use. So existing licenses. So to your point earlier, they'd have a practice management system like Clio, which launched an AI assistant Duo, and they'd be leveraging that. Or because they were a Microsoft shop, they'd be experimenting with Copilot. In big law, the way I like to think about how big law, especially in the US, has approached buying generative technology, it's kind of like a Venn diagram with three circles. One is your proprietary chatbot solutions. So many firms, I know all across Australia as well, deployed a foundation model through API, and it was their own proprietary chatbot, usually RAG-based, pointed at their firm's data. Then you have your solutions that are more on the operational administrative side. So adding productivity to emails, day-to-day communications internally, and so on, like your copilots. And then you have the third bucket, which is domain-specific legal solutions. And there you either have broad AI solutions like AI legal assistance or your legal point solutions. Interestingly, in large law, they are not choosing any one of those buckets. They're doing something in all of them.
Wow. Okay.
Which is, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, as we've moved towards this year, we've seen firms slightly move away from their internal chatbot and make a bigger decision around either buy or build. So we had a firm in the US recently, Cleary Gottlieb, buy an applied AI vendor, and they're going to focus considerably now on building for competitive advantage. And then you have other firms that have gone very heavily into buy. Really, for example, Ashurst deploying Harvey across all offices and really going hard there. But most firms are doing broad AI legal assistance as well as point solutions for legal specifically. And those legal point solutions where they're making buy decisions is areas where they have really high value priority use cases, and their agent often come into play. So that's where we're seeing more of the agentic AI.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, gosh, there's a lot to take in from point of view of I for a firm, and again, I think these resources you've got and the expertise you've got in seeing what's out in the marketplace and what people are doing is very valuable.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for people because the market is evolving so quickly and the technology is evolving so quickly that it's hard to keep track of. So one thing I think we'll see more of is firms moving away from some of their incumbent systems, like Kira is one that has been entrenched for contract review for a really long time. I think that kind of thing is being disrupted increasingly by newer solutions that are leveraging more advanced technology. So we've started doing these competitive analyses. We started doing them last year, and it's been quite fascinating to track, for example, in the due diligence space, where last year incumbents still really held strong. This year, we've started doing those already, the next version, and there has been a real explosion in terms of new entrants that have very, very quickly been able to at least match and in some cases exceed at the feature level the incumbents. So I think we're going to see a lot of firms reviewing their existing tech stacks and deciding to replace some of the solutions.
And are there any other sort of things or trends that you're seeing in the marketplace as well? And, buying behaviors.
I mean, I will say that funding has just been at an all-time high in terms of the rounds that we're seeing and how much is being poured into the market. So it used to be that a 100 million US dollar funding round was pretty unusual. Now, a lot of the rounds we're seeing are, 100 million at a minimum. And I think we've seen something like 6 of the largest raises ever in legal tech happen already this year in 2025. And I think that's indicating a trend as well towards mainstream. So one of the things that's happened with generative AI is that whereas before was really not very cool for a developer or data scientist to work in the legal field, why would they do that when they can work with big tech? Now, because legal has been highlighted as an industry that's really significantly likely to be disrupted, a lot of new talent is flowing in on the tech side into law. And so you have this explosion of startups. We recently released a map that showed 500 products in legal tech that are being built out with generative AI, either AI native from the beginning or Gen AI is being built into them on the back end. And that's changing the market quite a bit. New people, new creativity. It's really interesting. And so from the buyer side, what that has also meant is because it's changing so quickly, firms are piloting more. And there are a few reasons for that. One is I think they feel this pressure to have a bit more R&D and really understand what's happening out there and be testing new tools even as they're licensing existing tools. I think another reason is because generative AI has some innate weaknesses, for example, the tendency to hallucinate in certain circumstances that you have to pilot in order to validate the technology and that it actually does what it says it does. Whereas previously, we never had to do that. You would assume the tech does what it says it does. It's just the validation was, does it address the use case? Now you have to validate both the tech itself and the use case, which is interesting.
That is, it's a whole new level of complexity.
It is. And so it kind of leads to another trend that I would highlight, which is AI governance. So I think there's a limit to the degree to which firms will be able to continue to pilot at this rate. It's just not sustainable in all kinds of ways, right? Like you hearing about lawyers getting pilot fatigue, but also from a security perspective, there's much more complexity now in terms of what InfoSec teams need to deal with. And that's a large lift if you're bringing on more solutions, even just at the pilot phase. There's complexity in other ways too. There is, as I mentioned, the hallucination issue and the validation issue there. There's also complexity in terms of client guidelines. So you have some clients that are saying, we really want you to be using this technology and we want to benefit from the productivity gains that you therefore benefit from yourselves. We also have clients that are saying, absolutely no, under any circumstances may you use these tools. And then you have clients that are saying you can use them, but you need to be transparent and tell us where and how. And so now you have a new arena of technology that I'm calling AI governance tools or AI adjacent solutions. And they're really coming to the fore to solve that problem, this increased complexity around law firm operations, specifically to do with AI. So you have tools that can identify hallucinations and mitigate them. You have tools that can ingest client guidelines and provide a gating mechanism so that lawyers enter the client matter number and they're automatically told, yes, you can use AI in this matter, or no, you can't, or yes, you can, but only in this way. And you have ones as well that operate more on the security side to give an indicator when there may be a risk of a data breach, for example, as well as ones that provide governance around regulatory and policy rules and can provide that as kind of overarching notification grid around use of AI. So it's really interesting. If I was heavily investing in the legal tech market at the moment, the area I would bet on is not core AI tools because firms are still unwilling to commit long term to those. I would bet on AI governance solutions because I think almost all firms are going to have something there in the foreseeable future.
I mean, it sounds to me like a must-have. You've got to have that in place because, as you said, you've got client issues, there's data breach issues. It sounds like it's just part of the fabric. It's just got to be there.
Exactly.
And, with AI being built into all these different kinds of products and things, having that base to cover that off is sounds essential. Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. So basically, best way in terms of engaging with LegalTech Hub is to go to the website. You've got areas where vendors can actually find out more and law firms and in-house counsel can find out more as well.
That's right. LegalTechnologyHub.com. If you have any press releases you'd like us to see, because we do write about all kinds of things in the market, you can send it to press@legaltechnologyhub.com. And if you're looking for more information or want to talk to us about advisory services or other offerings, info@legaltechnologyhub.com.
An absolutely fabulous resource. And I mean, I wish it was around when I co-founded a company many, many years ago. But Nikki, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time and information as well. Very educational. Really appreciate you being on People in Legal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you.